This man probably doesn't need much of an introduction if you're plugged into the social media world. Rogan O'Hanley, goes by the name DC Drano, is one of the most powerful influencers on Instagram and Twitter. I think he's the perfect person to help advance the conversation we're having today. He's plugged into the political scene in a way that most people just aren't. He's connected to Donald Trump, and he's just plugged in. And so I so appreciate Draino taking the time. And Draino, just because some of my audience and myself are relatively new to these deep waters in the political war, tell us how you got the name DC Drano.
Yeah, so a lot of people are probably surprised to see me back on Twitter because I was banned for 2 years and Elon brought me back. So I'm not surprised people there aren't as familiar with me. But DC Drano stands for Draining the DC Swamp. And I used to be a Hollywood entertainment attorney out in Los Angeles, as crazy as that sounds. And once President Trump won in 2016, I knew I had to support this guy. I recognized the moment in history that we're at where there's a Marxist invasion from within of our nation. And I started posting anonymously on Instagram, and I eventually quit everything to do it full time in Florida because I think it requires my full effort and the full effort of so many others.
All right, so we've been having a discussion today, just had it with Royce White. My suggestion, my reaction after this bogus Trump indictment and then Brandon Johnson winning in Chicago and what happened with the Wisconsin Supreme Court and just Budweiser hopping in bed with Dylan Mulvaney and all this. I've just had it up to here, Draino, and I'm like, hey, secession has to be discussed. I don't have common ground with the other side. I don't think that anybody with faith in God has common ground with the other side. Abortion is such an important issue to the other side. I mean, they have convulsion. Oh, we can't kill babies. We can't kill babies. Well, life's not worth living. I don't have common ground. I honestly think we should be exploring ways to separate ourselves from people that don't believe in the founding documents, don't believe in the founding fathers, and don't believe in God.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I feel the same angst that you and so many others feel, especially after yesterday. And while I am personally not a proponent of secession, I'll tell you why. I agree that I don't share values with these people, but I do believe that they can be convinced in the long run. I believe that they were programmed like this from media brainwashing and propaganda, and they can be deprogrammed. You know, I was not nearly as pro-life. I've always been politely pro-life. And then only in the last 4 or 5 years have I been so open and outward with it. And I know I can see so many other people changing as well. But you know what? I believe that we are the majority in this country by a lot. I believe America is a 60-40 country in favor of Republicans as long as we can get rid of at least some of this election fraud, which I think we're getting close to the tipping point. And I also look at yesterday, the media wants us to be upset and downtrodden, right? But so here's what I'd say. Chicago, we were never going to win Chicago. That's been a blue city. I used to live in Chicago. It's been a blue city for 70 plus years. So I'm kind of not that concerned with that. And frankly, I think a lot of, 50,000 Republicans will move to other swing states and red states. So it's actually kind of a benefit in a way. Wisconsin, we won the Senate supermajority yesterday in the state legislature. They have the power now in both the House and Senate to impeach and to override vetoes from the Democrat governor. That is a major victory. And then in North Carolina, a Democrat has switched over to a Republican in the House, and now North Carolinian legislature has veto-proof supermajority in both House and Senate. And that Democrat governor has vetoed 75 bills in the last few years. So they're going to be able to override that now. So there were some major victories yesterday that a lot of the news and people just don't even know about because they're trying to hide it.
That's interesting. I needed that kernel of hope because last night, this morning, this afternoon, I'm just in a dark mindset. I'm so baffled that, and again, Rogan, I'm 55. And so I was telling Royce this morning, Royce is like 31. I was like, Royce, the reason I'm so upset is because I lived so much of my life in America in a different place where actually if you embraced Christian values, and it's not that I was the greatest Christian early on, but I did employ Christian values to find success in America and to go from nothing, living a 400 square foot, one bedroom apartment with my dad in 1984 to living on the Wilshire Corridor in Los Angeles for a decade, one of the richest zip codes in America. I did that by employing values that all seem to be under attack now, that you're disadvantaged if you embrace values that were taught to me in the church and embrace conservative values, Christian values. That's what's so frustrating. I lived so long where my values were an advantage, and now they feel like a clear disadvantage.
Yeah, I think the forces of darkness want you to feel like it's hopeless. I think hope is the number one thing people need to restore greatness to a culture and to a country. But, in addition to the things I mentioned yesterday, I remind people we have the U.S. House of Representatives in GOP control. And thanks to those 20 brave congressmen, the Patriot 20, I call them, that stood up and got a lot of concessions from Speaker McCarthy, we have what I consider a MAGA-controlled House of Representatives, okay? We have the Supreme Court 6-3. That same Supreme Court that just overturned Roe v. Wade, the biggest advance forward in saving innocent baby lives in 50 plus years since Roe v. Wade was enacted. And we've got Twitter now with a lot more free speech. President Trump got his account back. I got my account back. James O'Keefe got his account back. Mike Lindell, General Flynn. We got a lot of momentum. I know yesterday was a setback, but the big picture, we have stopped the bleeding when we have the House, when we have the Supreme Court, and we're going to flip this thing in 2024. The worse it gets in our country, the more people that wake up and come over to the light, the people that were ignoring this or were fooled by the propaganda, I believe the worse things get, the bigger the counter movement of the pendulum will be. And I am very optimistic for 2024.
And so your optimism for 2024 means you feel like there's been enough election reform that we can stop them from doing what they did in 2020 and taking the election away from whoever, Trump or whoever the Republican candidate is.
I don't think we're fully there yet based on what happened, but I think we're getting there. There have been very important changes that have been made. In Pennsylvania, the drop boxes were deemed unconstitutional by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Georgia reformed its elections. Texas is getting there. Florida shows what happens when you actually have pretty clean elections. Ron DeSantis won by 20 points because Florida, we created an election police force. We got rid of the mass mail-in ballots. There's a lot of things we can do to clean this up. Carrie Lake in Arizona, they stole it from her, but she actually just got a major victory at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, actually, you do have the right to look at ballot signature verification. And the reason why that's so important is that is now legal precedent in Arizona. After every election, people are going to be able to sue and look at ballot signature verification. And she's still fighting to get that done because the Maricopa Mafia is stopping her. But she has made a dent in that wall of fraud in Arizona and in North Carolina, in Wisconsin, with these super majorities. That is more powerful than a Supreme Court. I tell you that because they can go on offense. The Supreme Court can only rule on what's dropped before them. This supermajority legislature can override these Democrat governors and pass laws. So the one thing we cannot do is give up. The one thing we must do is continue fighting and chipping away. They put this communist infestation in place for 40, 50 years. We're not going to get rid of it overnight, but with free speech and God on our side, or following in God's path, doing what God would want us to do, it's actually kind of an opportunity, because throughout history and all the stories in the Bible and American history, it's when times are the toughest that the most historical names emerge. The Revolutionary War, the Civil War, those are the names that we remember. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. It's time for people like Jason Whitlock and others to make their mark in history during this tough time and become heroes and inspirations for future American generations.
Draino, I'll ask you one final question, let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time. Any chance that Trump and DeSantis quit bickering, or Trump quits bickering with DeSantis? Any chance these guys find some common ground?
Unfortunately, probably not until after the primary is over. It's tough for people like me and other Floridians. We love Governor DeSantis, but a lot of us really strongly support President Trump for 2024, and we want Governor DeSantis in 2028. So I was a little bit let down to know that he is running. I know a lot of people support him, and that's okay. And it's going to be a little rough for the next 8 to 10 months, maybe a year. But after that, I think we'll all get on the same page and join forces again. Whoever the nominee may be, I think it'll be Trump, but we'll all join hands together. So I hope people keep it above the belt, realize we're all on the same team. The enemy is certainly on the left. But, when it comes to controlling this country and saving the entire world, it's gonna be messy. There's a lot of power and a lot at stake. And we are actually pretty blessed to have two incredible leaders as our two frontrunners. The Democrats don't have that. They have Joe Biden, and we got Trump and DeSantis. So we're pretty blessed in the long run. But yeah, it's going to be a little rough for a while.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.